it's about the fact that we're sort of obsessed with our own change and our own moments and our own little points of like gentrification and displacement, but like you realise that like your story is not just like, it's not the only one. Everyone's being pushed out of areas and like losing things that they thought might be theirs forever.
Welcome to the Flying Fruit Bowl, a platform dedicated to the discussion and exploration of art in the creative process. In today's episode, I had the chance to interview the amazing artist Jo Peel. Jo is a UK-based artist working with a variety of different mediums such as painting and animation to create work that explores the urban environment and the regeneration of the cities we live in. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Jo, and I hope you do too. So let's start from the beginning. What initially inspired you to be an artist?
Oh God, it's so hard to know like what initially inspired me to be an artist, because I guess I've been doing it so long now. It just sort of seems to be, it's like a gradual journey, I suppose, rather than some like one day waking up and going, oh I need to be an artist. So, you know, in the sort of cheesy way, you'd be like all my life. And then in terms of like professionally and like how this sort of like the theme that I have got going on in my work now, which has been going on for the last like 15, 20 years, I suppose, is like urban regeneration. And like I can't like pinpoint the moment that it started, but I guess the first time it really became obvious where it was all coming from was some of the work that I was doing in the East London line in Shoreditch, because I was watching it sort of plough its way through a neighbourhood and like this new train being built, and how that was affecting, you know, people on the ground and buildings and the regeneration of the whole area in terms of like transport links. It suddenly all made sense to me about what was inspiring me.
Did you actually, like, do you have any art education? Like, did you study art or anything like that?
Yeah, I did illustration at Falmouth College of Arts in Cornwall, which was another place. It was interesting because obviously my work's always been inspired by cities and by urban regeneration, and somewhere like Cornwall was like an interesting place for me to be in terms of inspiration.
I can imagine, yeah.
Because I never sort of, you know, I love looking out to sea and looking at the beautiful views, and like that's sort of really cleansing for me to see nature. But in terms of my story and my like artistic vision, it's not something that I need to record. It's like something that's for me, not for part of my story.
Oh yeah, that's quite interesting. And do you think there are any particular skills that artists need to have to be, you know, successful?
Like a dogged determination.
Like, is there anything that surprised you about, you know, being an artist in terms of like what you didn't think you would need to do or need to be able to do, but that you find yourself having to do?
Oh, I mean, like you sort of have to do so many things that you become like. It surprises me how many things you have to do. I mean, public speaker being one. You know, like talking about your work, which is essentially like, you know, you become an artist because you don't really know how to express your feelings other than drawing about them and like creating visual images, and then everyone just wants you to talk about them.
That's
so
write
true. About them. So
I guess it's just the assumption that you make it, so you should know what it's about, when actually that's not really the case.
I suppose so, yeah. And I think like I have been learning what it's about, and it's interesting talking to people about my work because they reflect back at me what they think, and it makes me like realize more about what I think. And I suppose for example, I had an interview a few years ago now with someone who was interviewing me for an exhibition, and they sort of said the word displacement as like a theme that they saw as like part of my work, and it really hit me, and I was really interested in that because I guess I probably wouldn't have come up with it myself, but when I looked at it I was like, oh yeah, that is really relevant to everything that I do.
But I guess that's the beauty of art, really, isn't it? That you have an idea what your work's about, and then somebody else comes along and says, I actually know this is what I think it's about, and you're like, oh wait, actually it could be about a number of things. Like it's the way it's interpreted and way people reflect their own experiences onto your work, as opposed to, because obviously you know where you're creating it from, but other people have their own completely different ideas and visions, and it probably helps you in terms of creating new ideas and generating kind of interesting, concepts to explore.
I think it's interesting because I guess in terms of like new concept, I don't really like all of my work does boil down to one thing, which is quite interesting. But it's it's understanding like why I keep making work about the same thing again and again, and how that's relevant to the whole like human experience, I suppose. And then because like when you look at like how the urban environment exists and like the people who live within it, it's like it says like everything you need to know about the world that we live in like right now. And that's yeah
I think your work is extremely fascinating, like really fascinating.
oh, thank you.
Like I haven't really seen anything quite like it, actually, to be honest. I really haven't. I think what really hit me personally when I saw it was this idea of like the environment. You're talking about the environment, and particularly the urban environment. You're talking about the environment within the environment itself.
Yeah.
It's like a really interesting kind of self-reflection. Can you talk a bit about like how did you actually get into this particular theme and create such work? I'll get into your work a little bit more and certain images and certain things.
Yeah, sure.
But, yeah, just like an overview of like how you got into the kind of work you create and like where that came from.
Working on this, like physically the work on the street and all that sort of thing.
Very much so.
I guess like it was just through people I knew. So I was like, I moved to London from Cornwall, where I'd been sort of drawing all these pictures of like the East London line, like going through the neighbourhoods and like looking at old businesses and like thinking about the relevance of all these different places. And then when I moved to London, I was introduced to people who were in that scene, I suppose. And like it just seemed like a really nice fit. Like you say, it's like a really good place to talk about the urban environment is in the urban environment. And so it is like sort of my work is like holding a mirror up at people to show them their environment. So to do that in the space that they're already in is like a really nice way to do it. And so, and I'd also like when I was in Falmouth in Cornwall, I did interior design and used to paint like pub signs and like huge murals but just of like Kylie Minogue or a Moroccan scene or something like that, because it was like what other people wanted me to do, not like my work. So I'd sort of do my work in the spare time and do these for money. And I guess I just always found working on a large scale easy. Like it made sense to me.
How do you tell me what's personal work and what's some more commercial work, and how do you kind of define the two?
Well, I don't do commercial work anymore.
That's even better then.
Yeah. So when I was obviously like, well, I finished uni. While I was in uni, I like worked at a restaurant, and the people who owned the restaurant like really liked me, and they didn't want me to go. And I always said like, when I'm finished, I'm not going to be working as a waitress anymore. And so they just got me in like doing like, as creative a thing as they could find for me. Be it like, I don't know, I painted all the toilets pink once and like then like redesigned some new restaurants for them, and they opened a shop and got me to run it. So like they just sort of like included me in like anything they could think of that was creative, which was amazing. And then so I just always I guess I never thought that I'd make money from my artwork, like, and so the work that I made for myself I just made. I didn't like, and I opened one shop that we made ceramic tiles. It's a random story, but and then in the shop I'd just been to Japan, and I'd seen like shops over there with like cafes in them. And it was quite a long time ago now, and like before it had sort of come over to the UK. It's quite normal, I suppose, now. But it was like, art gallery, come cafe, come shop, like come ceramic tile making factory. And I just like put my artwork in the walls there, and like, none of them ever sold, but it was like, that was my output.
It's getting eyes on your work though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, because it actually seems like you're doing quite a lot of different things. So that's actually pretty
Yeah.
interesting. And I'm actually kind of curious to consider how even stuff like ceramic tiles, how that's affected your work now. And in terms of like the way that it's influenced you, in terms of you've done so many different things, how do you know what the one right thing is?
I think like because I sort of have a theme in my work, like a sort of like my work's always about the same thing, which is like urban regeneration. And so how I approach that can be anything. Like, you know, I could make ceramic tiles now. If someone said make some ceramic tiles, like I would know what to make on them because like my work is my work, and so it wouldn't bamboozle me. Like I make, you know, I do installation work, I do video work, I make animations, I make big streets works, I make canvases, you know, all of the different things. It's like they all are from the same place. And so even though like my sort of ways of making things are so different, they all feed into the same narrative, I suppose, which hence like not doing commercial work, because I'll do any job for any amount of money as long as it fits in with my
Your vision, I guess.
yeah.
I think that's the thing about art. I think it's hard for artists to create work that is both personal and also commercial, because obviously you want to make money at the end of the day. You're not like there's only so many years you can do it for free, or you can just do it for yourself if you really want a
Absolutely.
career. And I think the problem, I think one of the biggest problems at the minute really is that there's not exactly a lot of resources for the creative industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I think that needs to be improved. Personally, I think it needs to be improved. Like, what kind of creative resources did you come across? When you were first starting out.
Oh god. None. Like yeah, it's just really, really, really hard. I used to work in Top Man on Oxford Street setting out someone's concessions, like a friend's like, you know, label in the basement there. So I'd go there at like 7 a.m, set out the concession before the store opened, then go and work in my studio. And then I'd sometimes like, you know, do things in the evening as well. I'd do commercial work then as well, like for events and like films and things like that. So there was one time when I was like going in the daytime over to like a warehouse in near Oxford, and painting this huge bulldog on a dance floor that had to go in for this big party somewhere, and then like going back to my studio at night and working till like midnight on a project that had a deadline for myself. And then like, you know, it was so crazy. And like, yeah, I think that lasted a week before I like fell asleep. Like I drove home and like stopped the car and fell asleep, and I couldn't even like get into the house. It was so frustrating. But
that's bad though.
yeah,
that's I mean, that's a problem though, is that like you want to create work and be refreshed. You don't want to be burnt out by trying to do something creative, because you know being creative is meant to kind of be like helpful and kind of make you feel good. You know, you don't want to be.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but I just think unfortunately, like I don't know. There's so many different ways of doing it, but I guess like.
What do you think we need to change?
I think people need to have the time and space. I don't know. I think in a way, like we need to, if people could really believe in themselves more. And I think like this is the sort of interesting thing looking back on like how I sort of did it, and like looking at the sort of inequalities in society and people who I don't know, went to private school and had like sort of more opportunity. It's interesting that like a lot of the time they didn't actually physically have any more opportunity. You know, they might have done it on their own, but they just knew that they'd be okay. And so if you know that you're going to be okay, then you're not in such a rush. Like, and I think like for me, I burnt myself out a lot because I didn't see a safety net. And so I just like, I didn't know when I could stop. Like it was almost like, yeah. Whereas now I feel like my work is better now because I'm able to stop and to reflect and to sort of be like, oh, I'm not, you know, feeling the painting today. I'm not going to do it. Or like, oh, I'm going to change that deadline because it doesn't suit me. Whereas like previously, I wasn't able to do that. And so, you know, it's like, you've got an exhibition. Can you get a piece of work in it by next week? You're like, okay. And then like, how many hours have I got to produce that piece of work? Oh, from like 11 till midnight every night that week. Okay. And then you paint a painting and you put it in the exhibition. And it just is what it is. You can't be like, oh, sorry, like it didn't turn out as well as I wanted it to. Like, and so
That's a really good point you raised, actually. Like time, I think that's a really good answer. Time is what people need
Yeah,
more of, and it's
that
true.
is what, yeah, people need more time. And so to have more time, it's like they need more financial support. That's all it is. You know, if you can pay your rent and eat, then you've got time. But if you can't do those,
I think that's what I've realized in life. I think to be an artist, you need three things: you need time, space, and money.
yeah,
And you never quite have all three unless you're rich and you make a lot of money really quickly. You don't really have all three,
yeah,
and I think
exactly.
that's kind of the biggest shame. Like it'd be great to it'd be so good to open a school or something, or just open a studio space where you just get people work and stuff. Something like that would be
Yeah,
cool. That'd be really cool. Hey, maybe in the future, who knows? That'd be quite cool. That would actually be really
yeah,
interesting. Okay,
it would be really,
um,
yeah,
getting back
it
to your
would be
work.
really nice to,
Right. So getting back to your work. So urban regeneration. So
yeah.
obviously this is really kind of the main theme in your work. Can you talk a little bit about it and how, why this theme is so important to you?
I think it's important to me because it's important to everyone. It's sort of, it just, it's life right now. And so like urban regeneration, like it affects everyone because of, we live in an urban environment. And so watching it be replenished or sort of destroyed and like things being decided and like how that plays out, affects like everyone's everyday life. The gentrification issue, like for example, like the reason I left London was due to studio rent doubling, and like me just wanting my life to not be a struggle all of the time. And I think it's and that affects so many people because I think that experience of being somewhere like London is really important, especially to artists starting out, because like half of the battle is like meeting people and all of those sorts of things. And it becomes harder and harder to do that for people now. And then how that sort of affects like the cities that around the rest of the UK. And regeneration and like gentrification, they affect different people in so many different ways, and it's how people survive through those things. I think as well, in the current situation, it's really interesting to look at the pandemic and like how like things affect different people, and it's like how we choose to sort of react to situations and how we choose to survive is
And how has the current pandemic affected you and your work?
well, I guess I could be like, when I say like how we choose, like it's not the choice isn't always ours. It's like I've been incredibly lucky in the situation that I'm in, which is that I can still use my studio, and that I've been given this time and space to reflect on my work. I don't, that situation is not the same for everyone. It's like there's a lot of, I don't know, disparity being sort of shown by the pandemic, and it's how I want to say it's like how we react. It's like how does like society survive? Like it's not to do with just like everyone like being optimistic in their own personal circumstance. It's like everyone looking at like how we should all like get through this like together and like really look at like like regenerating like where we live and making it better.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's probably giving people that as we were saying earlier, at that time, probably giving people a lot
Yeah,
more time. Some people a lot more
that's
time.
well, that's it. It's given some people a lot more time, but it's given some people a lot less time. Like
Yes.
I mean, people who are working on the front line of essential jobs, which is a lot of people,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
childcare and all of these sorts of things. And it's like how we all work together to like move forward from that, I guess. Like, I mean, it's a big political discussion that needs to like be looked into, but it's like we really need to look at how we've affected the environment as well, and like how we can move forward. And
I think one thing really interesting thing about your work, and particularly your answer to that question, was that your work seems very selfless. So if you said that that urban regeneration is you look into it because it affects everybody, that's actually quite an interesting answer, because it's like, would you consider that your work is more personal then, or would you say actually it's not? And would you consider that you create work for yourself first or for others first?
that's a difficult one. I don't think like I really think about either of those when I create my work, but I think like I suppose the whole point is that my story is universal. Like it's like the story of how it is to be human, and to live in a city. And so I suppose when I look at what's happened, like it's a very personal story on one level, but I think like if it was, I think instead of like, it's not inward looking, it's like personal, but looking out to see how, how it affects a bigger picture.
And do you think that by choosing such a universal subject, it will engage more people?
I suppose so. Yeah, I guess I've never really thought of it in terms of like engaging more people. Like, I can't, like, I find it too sort of overwhelming, I suppose. Like, like that thing where you like, obviously, it's interesting, like being an artist, you want everyone to like your work and you want to, have lots of followers and everyone to like you. But like, if you actually consider like those people as people, like, it's like, I sort of like take a step back from that. Like, it's like, I put things out there and like, I'd much prefer someone else to deal with it. Because like this, I've taken a month off Instagram this month in January just to do that as well, because it's like I want to creating and like always like, oh, look what I'm doing. Like, you're sort of creating for this audience, and how much you're like, oh, I don't care about the feedback. Like, you do, because like you're like, oh, how come that one got that amount of likes and that one, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's like, I don't know. I guess it is creating for me. It's like a survival method. Like, my artwork is just how I sort of understand the world. But it's nice to be able to put it out there and for people to connect.
But like, very much so. Of course, that's kind of the whole point of social media, I guess, for creative people. That's the whole point of social media. It's kind of the engagement and kind of having eyes on your work and understanding how people see it.
Yeah.
And how people read it. That's definitely something we'll come back to. That's definitely something we'll come back to later.
Yeah,
like, for sure. So I want to talk about, and as you're probably not surprised, that about your animation Things Change.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And if you can just give us like a little overview about what it is, why you decided to make it, and how long that probably took you to do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, for me, that was like a hugely pivotal piece of work, because it was like the moment when I turned my work from like something, I think I like allowed people in to understand the story a bit more, because like a lot of the time people like initially look at my work, especially the sort of popular prints of like, Trellick Tower or a cafe, and it's like, oh, it's just an illustration of a building, like a bit sort of like pretty passe, whatever, like whatever you want to sort of. And so I guess like I had this story that was like kept going round and like in my head, and I really wanted to get it down. And so I was trying to work out like how do I do that? And then I was like, well, animation makes sense. And then I'd seen the artist Blue. He's done some, I think it was at Farming Festival in Italy. I can't remember the other artist now. It's really bad. But like, he'd done a collab with someone else, and it was like just amazing. It was like this animation in a building. I was like, whoa, like that's so cool. Like being able to like do something so 3D and so sort of like having a story there. And so my story was inspired by like walking along through like Bethnal Green and seeing the sort of like plant life sort of cracking up through the pavements and like the sort of nature taking back over. And it was like, what happens, like the sort of building like Shoreditch at the time, it was just like an explosion of like regeneration. And I wanted to look like post that like story to like what happens next, like what happens if there's a global pandemic and like everyone's like gone, and and like we're just left with the buildings like as they are now, and like nature just like reclaims the buildings and takes it back. And so it's called Things Change, because it's about the fact that we're sort of all obsessed with our own change and our own moments and our own little points of like gentrification and displacement, but like there's like a much bigger picture. And like when you look at it like that, I guess for me as well, it's like you feel smaller and you realize that like your story is not just like, it's not the only one. It's like everyone's being pushed out of areas and like losing things that they thought might be theirs forever. And so like
again, it comes back to this idea of universality and being kind of the bigger picture, I guess. Which is kind of cool, because your images are actually quite large as well, which is kind of like a funny kind of parallel, I guess. How long did it take you to create that animation?
Well, there was sort of it was like a big there was like a big sort of bigger thing that happened in terms of like when I first was gonna create it, because I actually like went out to Brazil to like paint it on a wall there. And then while we were there, we got like held up at gunpoint while painting this like animations, and it was like halfway through, and they took like my camera and like memory cards, and obviously like, and we were like where we were staying, we like had to like run away because like they said they were coming back for more stuff. So like the picture was like stuck on the wall and like never, like I couldn't finish it basically.
Yeah, of course.
And so like,
well, that's crazy.
It was, yeah, really crazy. And I think it was like such an interesting like thing to happen during the project, because it was like, yeah, it was a lot went into doing that. Like I had to like, go to Brazil, like get like the spray paint from like in this like outskirt in Rio and like all of that stuff, and then travel on. We booked a flight up to Bahia where it was being painted, and then realized that we couldn't even take spray paint on the flight, and had to like book a coach and smuggle it on that, and like, all of the things that went into it. Then you're like, yes, finally doing it, and then you're like, right, okay. So then, and it was like, I think it took me like another 6 months as well to like save up for a new camera, because like that had been,
oh yeah, they're expensive.
yeah. So it was like it really like held things up. But I think what was good about that was that it really gave me time to reflect and like be like, I still want to do it. Like,
see, that's amazing though. I applaud that determination.
Yeah,
because I think that just shows like that you're a true artist if that's how you felt. It would have been easy just for you to be like, this is a horrible experience. Who knows what's going to happen, particularly if we go to somewhere like London as well. Like London's not necessarily the safest of places.
Yeah.
It's not the worst of places either, but it's not, necessarily the safest of places. So yeah, like, I very much applaud you for even thinking to redo that, because that's absolutely crazy.
I think when you've got an idea and you really sort of, you know what it is, it's like, it's almost like the failures are like as important as like getting it done, because if everything just runs smoothly and you're like, la la la, aren't I a wonderful artist? Isn't this fun? Like, it's like, there's just, I guess like you said, it's like a different sort of way of like life happening. And I suppose you're not pushed, you're not sort of like made to like really.
Yeah, I think you should be challenged.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not saying, you should necessarily be had at gunpoint, because that's not something that people should be
ideal,
doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise it for like creative. It could definitely stunt you for a while, like in terms of creative expression.
But I generally think people should be challenged, and particularly like their own views challenged. And actually, how do you stay safe when you're outside working? Like, say if you're working on a mural or working outside in the environment, how do you actually stay safe?
I've never felt unsafe. I always work with an assistant now. But it's not safety. It's more like if I need to go to the toilet or get a cup of tea, like I don't want to pack up all my paint. Like, I mean, obviously it would, like, you can't just leave paint on the street and walk off with it. Like, for like the paint being stolen or like someone's property, like all of the liabilities with that. But like, but in terms of safety, like I've never felt unsafe. I guess, and I didn't feel unsafe in Brazil. Then when I got back to London, I didn't feel unsafe. I think like there's always so many people around, and like.
I about to say, so how do you do with the public then?
So scissor lift for four. You just go, excuse me, you just go up. No, you just sort of.
Do they ever like stop you and ask what you're doing and do, and then like taking pictures, and you just want to kind of get on with it because you probably have a deadline, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing is generally like when you are, you do have to just get on with it, and when you're painting, you've got your back to people, and like you can turn around and like there's ways of just like it being obvious that you're working, like, and then there's times when you talk to people. I think one of my favorite was when a taxi driver used to come past like a mural that I was painting in London, and it was like, where was it, like near Enfield somewhere, and he'd just come by all the time and like say, oh yeah, you're doing a great job, it's amazing, and it was really nice. And then one day he stopped with his taxi and he was like, I'm going to sing you a song, and he brought his amp and his guitar, plugged it all in, and he literally like serenaded us on the pavement and just like sang us this song like next to his taxi, and then was like thanks, and like drove off. It was amazing. But
that's nice though. But I guess in many ways it's the exchange, isn't it? Like you're giving something to the community.
Yeah.
And maybe she wants to give you something back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, well, on the Things Change one, actually, like it was really interesting when I started it, because there'd been like a really prominent like graffiti artist who had done like something before, and so obviously like you white out the wall before you start, and it was on like Village Underground, which is like quite a prominent place, and like obviously no one sort of knew who I was either, and like I started small because it's an animation. I kept painting everything out as well, and like people walk past and they'd just be so derogatory, it's like hard. Like the first week or so, it was literally like, someone was like, "Oh, what a waste of a wall." Gilbert and George came past and said that Michelangelo would be turning in his grave, which I actually took as a compliment. So, rather than, but you just like, it was just like all of these like, what, like, just horrible comments basically.
That's
like,
quite sad to hear. Yeah.
And then like what was interesting on that particular piece, then once I'd filled the whole wall, like everyone was like, "Oh my god," like really positive. And I had like a street art, loads of different street art tours that came past as well actually, and they'd all like stop and like the guy who ran it would get everyone to like cheer and like things like that. So like it was such a weird experience from like this like real like you're just like you against the wall with this like with your pots of paint, just hours a day painting, and everyone just telling you that you're rubbish and that they can't believe you've painted over this like really great artist. And then to the end where everyone's like, "Yeah," and you're like, it's often like that.
Do you think that actually that experience gave you more valuable feedback than say feedback you get online?
Oh yeah, like the real life feedback is so much better because like, but then also so much worse actually, like because online, like if people are horrible, like you're just like, "Oh yeah," like, well, I don't know, I guess it always hurts if people are horrible, and that's you can get like 100 nice comments and it's just like you don't believe, you're just like, "Oh, they're just being nice so that like people can see them being nice online and like to build their algorithm that they don't really like my stuff." But if someone's horrible, you're like, yeah, it's true, they hate me. And
it sticks with you. The negative comments stick with you more than the positive ones.
Yeah, it's so
because
sad.
because anyone can say they like your work, and people, I think the problem we have online is that we have like a system or a society, I guess, where we'll try to be nice all the time online.
Yeah, exactly. And so it feels slightly false. You're like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, I like that," and "Oh, I love that," and "This is awesome," and I'm super guilty of this as well because so it's like when you see that negative comment or someone says something that's not quite, "Oh, I like it," it sticks with you, and it kind of plays on your mind a lot as well because you're like, "Oh, this one person doesn't like it. Who else doesn't like it?" And then you're like, "Oh wait, but what about somebody else? They might just say they like it, but they don't like it," or so there's always that to think about.
Or not think about is the key.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So one other animation that I watched, and I actually spent a long time on your website looking through all your work.
Oh, thank you.
In a little bit more depth because it's really funny because when I saw your work and I invited you to the Fine Football, I saw it because I really liked it, and then I thought, you know what? Who can I interview? Because I'm trying to look for people who are. I don't know how I pick people I interview, but I just do. But I just saw your work and I was like, this is interesting. This is very different. Like, this is something I'd like to talk about. And I think it's like interesting. And one thing I wanted to talk about was your animation pipe dreams.
Yeah.
Which, I actually really love. Like, I really love that.
Oh, thank
I
you.
really love.
Yeah.
I just think your work is really fascinating. Like, I was watching it like in amazement. Like, this is really cool. Like, it must have took you a long time to do.
Yeah, it was the same. So yeah, I guess like the things changed. It took like 3 weeks on that wall, and then like another week to like edit it all together. And interestingly, so from doing the things change one of the street art tours that used to come around and like cheer and like be really nice to me, the guy who ran that I had like the double-decker bus that was in Pipe Dreams, and he put some money towards it and gave me the bus to like use as my office and like basically help me break even on, because on the things change, like I self-funded the whole lot and essentially lost like my flat because I was like didn't think about like the months that, I could afford it that month, and I was like, oops, next month sort of thing. But so on Pipe Dreams, like I was like, I really wanted to do it, but I didn't have like £1,000 to spend on paint and time. So so he helped me fund that, and then we made that in the courtyard of I've forgotten, it's like all been pulled down now. It's it was like an amazing space for like art and all sorts going on.
Yeah, so what I really liked about it, in the pipe drawings, like the pipes were both the construction, kind of they made the city and they also destroyed the city by flooding it. And I
Yeah,
think this idea of this kind of circular nature of creation and destruction and kind of rebuilding and like building and rebuilding and knocking things down. And I want to actually ask your opinion on what do you think of this, particularly this current society, I guess. I don't know what it's quite like where you are now, but in terms of where I am personally at the minute, they're rebuilding the whole city again,
yeah.
pretty much for the city, because it's the city of culture, so they're rebuilding it for this year. So what are your thoughts on like general constructions and the way cities are like regenerated in that sense?
I think, I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Really, like it's like post like capitalist, like we're sort of like we're living these dreams of like of something that like doesn't exist because if you actually had to get down, I guess my political views are that we just need to look after more people and that we're putting so much money into like regenerating all of these things when like we need to get a lot more in order, and it's all like feels like a bit of a smokescreen for a bigger problem, which is that like capitalism isn't working anymore and that it's a massive mess. And like so with pipe dreams it was like the it all starts with that little paper boat, so it's like the pipe dream is like, oh, you've sort of like made a little boat and then like the world sort of floods because the sea levels are rising, all of that sort of like story. And then it's like the little boat that you sort of made that was just a little idea is the like escape route from that. So it's like it's like thinking small and like thinking sort of like on a more human sort of level to sort of escape something that we've created that could essentially destroy us.
I guess also the really interesting thing about that is that when you just said that, it made me think like, I was going to say it's like the smaller things affect the bigger things, the same way
Yeah.
like one brick builds a house.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice. It comes like parallels nicely with your work. This is why I'm interested in your work, because there's so many interesting parallels within your work, about your work, and then about the bigger picture of your work. And it just feels very like just fascinating because maybe you don't even notice them in yourself, or maybe, and I don't know, there's just something interesting because it's just like you're talking about the environment, within the environment, on the environment.
Yeah.
And it just seems like very what environment are you showing is real? Is it the environment we're living in that's currently being continuously reconstructed, or the one on the wall that stays the same because it's not going to change, or is it the one that you're presenting in your animations that constantly changes?
But I guess it depends at one point in time you're looking at it. So all of those things, because like I guess like the key in my work that other than the animation, it's like it's always of now. Like I don't sort of draw things from the past, or I might put like elements of a supposed future in it, I suppose, but it's like it's very much about like what's happening right now and how that's affecting everything. And
how important is like reality to your work? Is it important for you to be true to life?
no, it's not important to be true to life, but it's important to be true to reality. And I think those two things are quite different.
How are they different?
If anything, like none of my paintings are true to life. Like I draw straight buildings with a wobbly line, and I cheat angles that don't exist, and all of those sorts of things. But what I'm trying to do in that is show a reality that like has like a more of a, I guess it's like my artistic view of what's happening. So it's like it's my reality and it's the way I see things. So yeah.
And obviously, in terms of in pipe dreams, that in the end the city flooded.
Yeah.
Stuff like climate change, is that important to you in your work? Do you think that you'd create like more kind of specific series based upon such ideals?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like climate change is like hugely important to me, but I've I've always wanted to create work that's like more subtle than, I think there's other people that do that sort of the shouting better. I think the shouting is important, and I think it's really great that there are people out there like making more noise in more specific ways. But in terms of my work, I'd prefer it to be this like gentle sort of like more positive sort of way of like persuasion, I suppose. So it's like, oh, yeah, maybe I haven't thought of that, and like sort of trying to connect people on a more sort of personal level to really think about why they're doing what they're doing, what little things they could do to change, and like trying to be more positive about it rather than like we're all about to drown, do something now, to be like, oh well, like if you did this smaller thing, then maybe it'd be better. I don't know.
Like this is the potential outcome.
Yeah.
Think about it now.
Think about it. Yeah, don't think about it as like you're
So do you consider your work to be cautionary then, or would you say it's more documentary?
Well, like I see it more documentary, but like I'd say that document is cautionary because of like. So,
I'm about to say, well, it could be both.
Yeah, I think it's both. Yeah, because like we're living in a place at the moment where we're sort of getting real facts about like what we're doing and how we're doing them and how that's affecting the environment, and like people are choosing to ignore that. And so so I guess like a lot of my work on the urban greening that I've been doing with Nigel Dunnett, the landscape architect, has been to do with that, which is like physically bringing greenery into my work and like into the environment. So I've been making I've made a green wall with artwork, so it's like 50% green wall and 50% artwork, and it's been made all together, which actually I've got a lot to do updating my website up. It's not I should spend more time on that. But yeah, and we've done quite a lot of projects, and it's all to do with basically trying to work out how to make my artwork physically more environmentally conscious, whether it's like painting on a wall and considering the spaces around it. Like, well, it's interesting, like for example, like when you're painting on a wall, often there'll be lots of habitats on that wall before you start painting, and so if you scrape them all away, and I did one down in Hackney quite recently, and it was a brick wall, and the crevices in the bricks were quite deep, and so in those were like all of these little spider habitats and all sorts of things going on. And I was like, oh my god, I don't want to like whitewash the whole thing and like fill in the gaps because it's kind of destroying something. Yeah. So I decided to like create from the gaps in the wall, like make that part of the work. So it was like an important part of it was leaving them, and I filled them in some places, but I just like was able to then like leave most of them. And so it's like little things like that. I mean, it's just such a small intervention, but like like if you're redoing the garden, like do you pave it all because then you can just hose it down, or do you make it like as much of it breathe as possible? Because the reality is like we can stop this sort of flooding and this global catastrophe by just creating more spaces for floodwaters to be sucked up by and not paving everything over. So yeah,
that's actually a really interesting point. I hadn't actually thought about that. That's actually a really good point. And actually, do you think that as an artist you have a responsibility? I guess you probably do, because you just kind of said similar stuff. Like, do you think artists in general have a responsibility, whether they're creating work about the environment or not?
I think that everyone has a responsibility.
That's probably the best answer, to be honest.
Yeah. It's like where that responsibility lies. I don't, like every artist's like artistic practice is their own voice, and like no one's responsible for like it's like how that comes across. Like they don't have to like talk about everything, and it's like it's everyone's individual journey. But then that artist, when they go home, should be thinking about the environment, as should the scientist and the school teacher.
So what kind of responses does your work normally get, and what kind of conversation do you hope to create with it?
I don't know. I guess people are starting to understand it more. Like I was saying earlier about like some people sort of seeing it as quite surface. I guess it's always a fear to me that like, not a fear, like I'm always a bit like, oh, everyone just thinks it's just, pretty pictures of buildings and not really getting it. I guess it frustrates me when it's like people don't get it, but like at the same time, it doesn't either, because it's like, well, if I get it and I get to do it full time. So it's not, I guess like it's not really, I try not to dwell on that too much.
Actually, that leads me into a question I was going to ask you later, but I'll ask you now. So do you think that people value art and the time it takes to create art?
Oh God, I mean, yes and no. Like I think people value art in a way that's like amazing. You know, like I always find it funny when if I've painted a canvas or something and like take it somewhere to, I don't know, to be framed or something like that, and someone like has to like move it, and they'll be like, oh, like want to put on some cotton gloves or something. And I'm just like, oh, just it's really funny because for me, like, it's like there's that side of things which is like really amazing and beautiful as well, that people sort of see it in that way. But
Goes into
the time and effort, that's like a really interesting one, because like I think sometimes like you can paint something in 5 minutes and people are just so flabbergasted that you're able to do it in 5 minutes that they're like, wow, that's incredible, because they understand that the reason that you did it in 5 minutes is because of the 20 years that went into it. But then other times, you can spend like 3 weeks on a painting and tell someone that it's like £2,000, and they're like, oh my God, that's expensive. And you're like, yeah, but if I broke it down into hours and then told you how much the gallery takes, like it's not minimum wage. And like, so it's really interesting, the sort of like what value like people put on. And I'm not saying that, and it all relates to people's experience, because like for someone who doesn't spend £2,000 on anything that isn't a car or a computer, like it seems like a huge amount of money, and like so that is relevant to them. Like, they're used to spending 50 quid on like a poster at the most, like, that's like, or like probably a fine, like people just don't spend money on things for themselves in that way. Whereas like people in the art, and like suddenly it's so interesting when you're in it and understand the prices, and then
And what do you think? Like, what do you think? There's a conversation I had the other day with another artist. So I don't know if this interview will be after that one. I'm not sure. But so what do you think that we can do to bridge the gap between, say, the general public and artists, in terms of making people aware of just how much time and effort goes into art, and then also without losing the mystery of art?
I don't think we need to. I don't think the mystery of art is its beauty, isn't it? And so part of that mystery is that like, oh, how long did it, people want to sort of quantify things, but like it's not really that important. And as long as there are people who like understand the value and why it is that value, and that system works. I mean, like that system's got all sorts of problems, but any system where you're buying things has problems. It's like that's our world. But like in terms of like the way that people appreciate art, like whether people are buying it or not, like people do appreciate art, and once they've understood it, like, and like I'd say like most people have something that they like, be it like an old master, or like a graphic design poster from their youth, or like anything. It's like, what is art, what is like appreciating art. It's like it's not about like making people understand it more. It's just about making it more accessible for me, and making people aware that they're allowed to feel how they feel about art.
Is it important for your art to be accessible? And do you want it to be accessible to everybody?
I think like art should be for everybody, and like to be accessible to, like, that's what's nice about it being on the street, because people, like I don't want to hear the bad comments, but I'm happy for people to like have an opinion about it, and like that's important. Like it's like the whole point of like putting things out there is so that there's a dialogue, and so people can be interested in their environment. So like now that that's in their environment, that's another thing for people to talk about, if people are appreciating it or not. Like at least it's just nice to be able to get it out there and show people work.
Absolutely, I imagine so. And do you think that do you feel like you're part of a wider art community?
Yeah, I think like the art community is like an amazing, really. Like I don't know how I'd survive without all my like art friends to sort of relay our insecurities to.
And do you actually have any advice for artists who may want to network a bit more, but are not quite sure how, or like kind of the best way to approach people, that kind of thing?
Oh my God. I mean, like, I've no idea right now because I'm not part of any like Zoom communities. Like, so, but I guess there are, it's like,
I just mean generally, like just
in,
generally, like
in the
taking when
normal
you're
world.
first starting out. Yeah, like even when you're first starting out, say, like how do you get from, oh, this is something I do for fun, this is a hobby, to, actually I could potentially make some money from this, and oh, this could potentially be a career.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's own journey. For me, like it's like going to the pub, like the just going out and meeting people, going to private views, like number one, like yeah, just going to the art shows of artists that you like. If you go to enough, then you start meeting people there, and then you go to the pub with those people afterwards, and the next thing it's like it's gradual and but it's a personal journey for everyone because every way of working has its own sort of way of being like and communities, I suppose. So like there's so many different genres within the arts and so many different types of art environment, and they all have different ways in and different ways of so it's like I think like my key advice to any artist is to like understand your practice, like where it sits and who your contemporaries are. And so once you understand that and where you fit in the world, then you know how to reach those people because they're already there. So
All right, that's cool. And so can you talk a bit about exhibiting your work, because you exhibit your work a lot? Can you talk a bit about exhibiting, like what the kind of process for that is, and how you actually, at what point did you know that you wanted to exhibit your work and that it was I don't want to say good enough because that sounds like it's, but yeah, like good enough to do so, or like you felt confident enough to do so, should I say?
I guess like from going to art college, it wasn't like whether it's good. You're just sort of looking for opportunities to put it on the wall, and like I said in the shop in Cornwall, it was always on the wall, and like I guess I never really thought it was. It wasn't whether it was good enough or not. It was just like there, and like no one ever bought it, so I guess I didn't think it was good enough. But I just like put it there anyway. But yeah, and then when I was in London, I was introduced to Rick of Scroll Collective, which is like a arts collective, and he was doing a little pop-up gallery in Covent Garden, and so he put my work amongst like all of this like work of like people who I saw they were like real artists, and I was like okay, and then like my work sold, and that like yeah, that was mind-blowing because it's like whoa, like people actually considered my work good enough to buy. Like that was yeah, and I guess that was really the first point in which I was like oh okay, and through the whole and then it just sort of carried on like that. Like I was always gonna just keep making my work and just keep showing it, and then I just thought I'd do like this film work and event work like to make money and then make art. But then luckily like now the art makes more than that, so yeah, it's like
Yeah, like yeah, it kind of, it's an investment though. That's the thing. Like it's like at the start, it's like an investment
yeah,
because there's no guarantee,
yeah, for
and I
sure.
think and also there's no business training either.
God no, yeah, that's what's so crazy.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. These things, and as somebody who creates work that is within the environment, and actually I'd love to go into London and see some of your work. That'd be so cool.
I don't
I'd
know
love
if
to do
there
that.
is
I
any
really,
like the thing about London is it gets repainted so quickly. Oh no, there are a couple actually. Yeah, there's a couple on
oh there.
Sunday. Yeah.
Well, when things actually get back to normal, I can actually travel around. I'm
Yeah.
totally gonna go to London and have a look. I'm gonna keep an eye out for your work specifically
Amazing.
because I'd love to see it in the flesh. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
But do you think your work translates well online?
I think it's better in the flesh, which is, fine by me. It's like the online sort of thing. It's fine online. It works fine online. And like, there are people whose work is just like phenomenally better in real life. Or like the other side, I guess, like people's work, it looks amazing online and then you see it in real life and you're like, oh, like it's not, I don't know. And I think I don't know. I've not had that experience of seeing my work online before in real life. I never will. But I hope that it's better in real life. That's yeah.
So actually, I want to talk a little bit about online and social media. So like, how has social media affected your practice? And especially, actually, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so how's it affected your practice?
I don't know. I'd like to say it hasn't, but I'm sure it has. Like I try and make it affect my practice as little as possible. But in a positive way, it's allowed me to connect more directly to people and sell, I sell work for it, which is great. On a negative, I'm always sort of posting, like, yeah, sort of like thinking about, oh, what should I post? I don't know. Like, it's not like I'm always thinking that. A lot of the time it is just like, oh, I've done something, I'll post it. Like, I can be quite natural about it when I'm in the flow of like, and it's just like, oh, new work, post it on Instagram, blah blah blah. But like, yeah, I think like there's like, I've gone off it for a month for a reason, and that reason is like that. Like, I want to see what influence it does have, because like by not ever posting anything, it's like it makes the work, so I don't know, like, does it make the work different? I don't think it'll make the work different, but it'll make my attention span different. And yeah.
Do you think that you're influenced by what people say to you online in terms of like your audience? Or do you work, like, do you have a specific audience in mind when you paint something or you draw something?
No, I don't. And like, I think it'd be like really difficult to say that you're not influenced at all by comments, because like I think everyone's influenced by everything that happens to them, and that's the sort of like everything that someone says to you, or how people react is like influences like how you behave and react. So it's like yeah, I don't really know how you'd sort of like quantify what is what, like. And in terms of like, I don't know, for example, my paintings, like, they don't do, I know that if I post on Instagram a picture of a mural on a big building, it'll be boo boo boo, like everyone will love it. And or like, maybe pictures of me, or like, I don't know, I don't really I try not to post many pictures of my face or anything, but yeah, there's obvious things that will get likes, and if I post a painting, then like, it doesn't get that much attention, but like it doesn't bother me, because I mean, for one, like, I've been selling them really well in real life, so that's an amazing, just so it's like you say, it's like, oh, how does the audience affect, but like I've still got an audience, and it's like, yeah, I think like if no one was buying the paintings and I wasn't getting like likes on Instagram, then how would I feel? I don't know, because that's not the situation I'm in. But
that's actually a really good answer. And do you think that in a way then social media creates a kind of how can I put it, like a false sense of security for, say, aspiring artists? Because they say, like, say for instance you have an artist you really like and they have, say, 1 million followers, say,
yeah,
and they get like 30k likes per post, and you just assume, oh, because they got so many followers they must be making a lot of money, when actually likes don't equate to money.
No. And yeah, it's a false sense of security and a false sense of insecurity too.
Do you think that the online community, or just being online, has affected the way that people react to art?
Yes, I do. And I think what's like, I don't know, it's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Because like the things like, I don't know, you can't help it, but you look at people with like 1 million and you're like, oh right, yeah, they're that. But it's not true. Like, like
how many of them are bots? That's what I want to know.
How many of them are bots? Like, how many hashtags do they put? How many like campaigns have they run? Like, I just like, I don't play the Instagram game, and I've seen like so many things about how you play it, and like, I don't know, thing like it goes fine for me. Like, everyone who's there like is real, and they're really like, they've come to me through like real engagement, rather than like being fed through funnels of algorithm.
Have you ever actually used paid ads? Not just on Instagram, just on social media generally.
I used some on Facebook before. I've had a few things where I've had like experimented with social media managers. I've got this like dream where like one day I don't deal with social media and someone else does it for me. But every time I've got someone to do that, like, I've found it so sort of icky, and like, I don't know, the nuances are so important to me, and so it has to be my voice. And so I've never let anyone touch my Instagram, because I feel like, even though I think the whole world, like the whole Instagram thing is just kind of horrendous, like I still need it to be me.
Yeah, I think it's a creative control, really, as an artist.
Yeah.
It's like, you wouldn't let somebody else paint your painting.
No.
Why would you let somebody else then have your voice?
Exactly.
So what kind of engagement do you think is important to you for your work?
The engagement where I sell work just enough to like get by, and then after that it's like all, yeah, I don't know, like like that's the baseline really, to like engage enough to make a living out of my art. Like that's like, as long as I can do that, that gives me the freedom to carry on doing what I'm doing. And so, that's, yeah.
That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. So if no one saw your work, would you still create it?
Yes. But I'd see it.
Okay.
Like, yeah. I'd probably no, I'd probably like, yeah, because I did. I created it before people saw it. And like, yeah, so it's like, and I have like sketchbooks full of work that no one ever sees. It's like, yeah, so it's like.
And actually, do you think it's important that, I was going to say artists in general, but especially you, do you think it's important for you to have work that you don't share with people, that you create just for yourself?
Yeah, I think so, because it's understanding myself through that work. And like, yeah, if you don't understand where, like if you're making everything for everyone else, like then you don't know, I don't know if I'd know why I was doing it. Like, yeah, I think.
Yeah, you lose a part of yourself, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit like, yeah, like this social media world, like reality TV stars, like all of that sort of thing. Like I could never give that much of myself away, and I feel the same about my art. Really, I guess I don't want to give that like everything away. Like, even when I'm on Instagram, I don't post everything that I do. Like, yeah.
And what, in your opinion, what makes a good piece of art?
Oh, what, like just generally in the art world, like a good piece of art.
Like for you, like what makes a good piece of art? Like what? So actually, or the best thing to ask, which might be more awkward for you, but like, what was the last image or piece of media you saw that really captivated you?
Oh, the last thing I saw that really captivated me, I guess, well, I saw Death Five Bloods, the film. I mean, we're talking like literally like the other night, and I just like was really into just like Spike Lee's sort of like pure vision, like the way he like creates a film with his own voice, and it's so tangible, and it's got like a story and a narrative, but he's also got like a style. I just yeah, I really enjoyed that. And like previously, something, I'm trying to think of like the last exhibition I went to, because it's been tricky. So like well, Giles Walker's show in London was really good. But I guess like the thing that really affected me was like the show that I saw. I'm gonna have to run and get the flyer and read it because I can't remember the name of the artist. This was okay. So it was at Somerset House, and it was by it was inspired by Jonathan Curry's book called 24/7, and the subtitle of the exhibition was like a wake up call for our non-stop world. And I just like, it was incredible. It like really like, I'd just been for a meeting in London, and then I'd walked from Victoria all the way to like East London via Somerset House. And so it was like a day just like spent in my own thoughts of looking at the city. And I'm always like super inspired, like walking around London anyway. And so I just called in on this exhibition. Before you go in, you went into an isolation chamber, and then you come out of the isolation chamber, the like meditation thing, and like go into the exhibition, which is essentially about, it's a multi-sensory journey from the cold light of the moon to the fading warmth of the sunset through 5 themed zones, and contains over 50 multidisciplinary works that will provoke and entertain, is what they say on the flyer. And it's about, it's just about the modern world and like the hectic like pace of it all. And it was really poignant for me at that point. And then, and like on the flyer, it says, I want my time back. It was, a month before the whole world shut down, and we all got our time back.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's
really nice. That's really nice. And actually, do you think, like, how much do you actually look for inspiration, or do you feel like you don't have to look for inspiration? You're just inspired anyway.
You almost have to look away. There's so much. There's like, yeah, no, I'd literally like, I have to anywhere urban. I guess like it's interesting, isn't it? I like.
And why urban though? Why not say the seascape, or say Cornwall, or some parts of the country that are
I find
flatter,
nature inspiring in a different way. I find it like cleansing and soul affirming, but I don't find it like, I don't feel like I have anything to add to it. It's like, it's almost like, for me, like, yeah, like nature, like, I mean, there are some incredible painters who paint like landscapes and they're beautiful and that's their language. But like, for me, like when I see that, that's like, it's already, it's just not, yeah, it doesn't inspire me in that way. Like, and when I say it doesn't inspire me, I don't mean that I'm not anti it. I'm very pro it. Like, I love nature, but it doesn't inspire my work.
It's just, yeah, it's just not what intrigues you. It's just not the kind of burning questions you want
Yeah.
to ask or consider. And I think actually the urban environment is a really interesting topic to look at. And a lot of artists I'm looking at the minute are looking at it in very, very different ways. And I think it's actually quite disregarded as well, which is why it's quite interesting to talk about.
What do you think?
Because,
Nature's disregarded?
No, the urban environment is disregarded because, we walk like say for instance, London's like a money machine.
Yeah.
People just walk through the streets. And they don't think twice. And, it's always changing. And,
yeah.
Like for me, like, I don't live in London. I live in the West Midlands.
Yeah.
So when I go to London, I love London because it's a completely different experience. But even where I live now here in the West Midlands, it's the same. It's like, it's very, the thing about cities, I guess, is that you're very locked in.
Yeah.
That's also really nice in a way because you have something that obviously places like Cornwall don't necessarily have, where you have more, it's more activity here, but we don't stop to really reconsider it.
But also I think like it's happened so much that it's become beautiful, whereas in Cornwall, like, I mean, I did spend time like, drawing the bins and the sort of telegraph poles and the parts of Cornwall that like I saw, and no one wanted to see it. No one's interested in the run down parts of Cornwall or the failures, because like they're like, we're here to look at the view, not to look at like the waste our species is like created next to it. Like yeah, so.
But that's interesting. That's kind of like the role of the artist, I guess, in terms of like you're highlighting things that other people don't really think about or don't really look at.
And it's interesting because when I highlight those things in a rural environment, like people are like, nice, see you later.
They're like, okay.
Yeah. And when I highlight them in an urban environment, people really connect to them because and I think like, what's it called? There's some sort of amazing word for this. And it's like how basically, because our urban environment has become our environment, we see it as beautiful. It's like a new type of beauty, which is like our way of like, it's our natural world, isn't it? It's like, the nature's been gone for so long that the views are different. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I think I'll ask a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up if you want, because it's been quite a while. But it's up to you. I don't mind, but no, I don't want to take up too much. Don't take up too much of your time. So a couple more questions. So firstly, why did you choose art as a medium to use to document the urban landscape? Like, why not something, say, for instance, like photography, or even create like small mini videos or something? Like, why art?
I don't know. Like it chose, like, it sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? It's like, it chose me. No, I just like, it's just the way.
No. I understand that.
Yeah, like, and I guess I've done photography, I've done video. Like, I guess like in terms of like when I was at school, I was like, I don't see the point of like maths, and I like art, and that's living creatively. Like, I guess like I never really thought I am an artist and I will be an artist. Now I'm like, oh right, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, so do you think, actually that's an interesting question to ask you, do you think that creativity is taught, or do you think it's just an intrinsic skill people have?
I think that it can be both. I think that like I don't really think that like, I mean, people can learn to be art, like, because the art world is like, if you want to make money in art, like, you can. You don't have to be creative. In fact, a lot of the people who make a lot of money in art are just not creative at all. And
they don't create the art themselves.
They don't create the art themselves. They know what sells. Like, and I could like make my work more commercially accessible and probably sell a lot more of it. But I just wouldn't feel right in that scenario, I suppose. And so, yeah.
Okay. So last couple of questions. So what do you think your art says about you?
What does it say about me? That I like the bins. What does I don't know. I don't know. that's for other people to decide, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And really the last question, I guess, is going to be, it's a double question, is what are you currently working on and where can people find more about you and your work?
So I'm currently working on an animation, a new animation that's going to be filmed and animated based on a story that I wrote when I was like 15. Yeah, I just sort of like have reimagined it, and it's like more looking on the animation, but like with the film work as well, because I made a music video for a friend that included like, you know, real life filming and animation, and so it's like moving on from that process with the filmmaker that I did that with to make a little short film, 3 minutes long or so. Yeah,
That's super cool. That's actually really interesting. Actually, I'm totally gonna keep an eye out for that. That's so interesting.
Yeah,
and also it's actually really interesting to consider that your work is evolving into like a different medium and kind of like combining with different mediums. That's really kind of the beauty of your work, I think, as well. It's like it could go in so many different directions.
Yeah,
You know, and you could work, you know, with like so many different kind of types of even collaborations and different types of people and for different kind of types of, not necessarily you want to, but like necessarily different kind of clients and stuff. Like I can imagine, now I think about it, I can imagine your work doing very well for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways.
Oh,
obviously just as much as you'd want it to as well.
It
depends what you're comfortable with as an artist and who you want to work with and stuff, because you have to be somewhat selective. So I guess lastly, really, where can people find more about you and your work?
Currently my website's not been updated for years, but I mean there's some stuff on there. So, and I'm hoping in the next sort of month or so I'm going to update it. So, and obviously I'm also not on Instagram at the moment either, but there's some stuff on there from the last.
Can you just give us your Instagram handle?
Yeah, I'd say Instagram's like where I normally post everything like up to date, and it's at Jo_Peel. Yeah,
that's absolutely perfect. Right, listen, thank you so much for doing this. Like, I really appreciate it.
No problem. Lovely to meet you.
That concludes this interview with Jo Peel. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any comments or questions, please shoot me an email at theflyingfruitbowl@gmail.com. Also, the Flying Fruit Bowl audio interviews are available on platforms such as Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. So if you like the show, please support it by subscribing or sharing with friends. As well as these audio interviews, I run theflyingfruitbowl.co.uk, which is a daily art inspiration website. If you're a fan of art and are looking to be inspired, please check it out. And if you're a creative, please get in touch for a chance to be featured or interviewed. Once again, thanks very much for listening, and until next time folks, please stay safe.